everybody, I'm Corinne Blackstone and welcome to my craft room. I'm so happy to have you here today and thank you so much for joining me. Today's tutorial, we're going to be using our Cricut Joy Xtra to do some glass etching. Glass etching is a great thing that you can do with your Cricut machines. It's really fun, really easy, you can get the whole family involved, and it's really inexpensive. Now, one thing that I want you to note is that not all glass will etch. There's a type of glass called borosilicate, and the way that that glass is made, it's tempered differently so that if it goes from like an extreme cold to an extreme hot, it won't shatter, where other glass isn't made like that and could shatter if it gets extremely hot or extremely cold right away. So you want to make sure that when you're choosing your glass that it is not borosilicate glass. Now, how do you know? You really don't unless it says somewhere on the packaging or on the online listing. So I'm going to show you how I test my glass just to make sure that it will etch before wasting all of my etching cream. The next thing that we'll talk about too is how to set up your stencil so that it works beautifully, it's really easy to weed, and how to upload that image, of course. So without further ado, let's get started. Glass etching with your Cricut Joy is actually pretty easy, so I'm going to show you how to do it. We're going to use a fairly easy image, but you can do lots of different designs. So what I'm going to do is choose upload, and I want to upload the image that I want to put onto my glass. Now, like I said, you can do anything that you want, but I'm going to make a little heart with some paws in it. So I'm going to browse for my image, and I'm going to use the SVG for this design. So what I'm going to do is find that, and my SVG looks like a Microsoft Edge document, but that is an SVG. So I'm just going to double click that and upload this into my design space. Now you're going to notice that it looks a little bit blurry through this portion, and that's totally normal. Design Space, for whatever reason, just they look blurry here, but once it's uploaded to your canvas, you'll see that it's nice and clear. Now we're going to be putting this on a cup, so we do need to make it quite a bit smaller because that's going to be really, really huge. So with these cups, I don't usually tend to want to go a whole lot wider than maybe a little over 3 inches, just because they're a little bit small and you just want to make sure you can see your design. Now, like I said, do whatever design you want to do. It doesn't matter. But again, remember that you want to make sure that your glass is not borosilicate glass, which I hope I pronounced that right, but you want to make sure that it's not that type of glass, because that type of glass is tempered differently, which means that it's better for like those temperature shifts. When you're putting like a cooler glass into an oven, it won't explode, stuff like that. So just note that if your glass doesn't etch, that's why. Now we are going to test our glass before we start etching, just so you can see how I test it if I don't know what kind of glass it is. So with this, we're going to be cutting this on permanent vinyl, which is a great way to use some extra permanent vinyl that you have, but you can use removable if you want to. That's a question I get all the time, or you can also use stencil vinyl. Now, one thing that I like to do is I put this into a square so that I have a little more space around the edge, because that way my etching cream doesn't get anywhere else on my glass. So I'm simply just going to add a shape. I'm going to grab a square. You can use whatever type of shape you want to. It doesn't matter, whatever makes you happy. And then I want to make my square larger than my heart. And I'm going to send this to the back by right-clicking on it and clicking send to back. Now I want to make sure that I've got a decent amount of space around my design, again, so none of that etching cream gets where we don't want it. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to select both of my pieces and I'm going to attach them. And that's going to have our heart cut out of our design. Now for this design, I'm going to have it etching the heart piece. So I will only weed out the heart. I won't weed out like the little feet or this section here, because I want it to show the heart as our etched part. So once I'm happy with this, I'm going to go ahead and make sure I save this design. I'm going to call this Extra Glass Etch. That way I know what I'm using it for. And from here, we can simply click Make. Now it's going to ask us how we want to cut this, and I'm going to cut this on the mat and click Confirm. Now you'll see that it's got it lined up. This isn't going to take a lot of vinyl, which is really nice. This is a great, easy project that doesn't take a lot of materials, and it's really, really fun. So from here, I'm going to cut this on the vinyl setting. I'll show you how we cut it and how we weed it. We're ready to cut our stencil with our Cricut Joy. I'm just using a scrap piece of permanent vinyl. I'm going to load this in, and I have this set to the premium vinyl glossy setting. Now before it is done and I've unloaded it, I always want to double check just to make sure that it cut through. Looks like it cut fine, so I'm going to go ahead and unload this. And we can take this off of our mat and weed it, which is super easy. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this off my mat. I am using the light grip mat, but it is still super sticky because this is like a brand new mat and this one is really, really sticky. So it's okay to use permanent vinyl on these when they're new. Now we're going to go ahead and weed this. So the first thing I'm going to do is weed around the box that we cut. And voila. And then all we have to do for this one, because it's really easy, is just weed off the heart. Now you want to make sure that all the pieces and parts of your little paws stay down. And I do find that when I cut with my Joy, I do tend to have a little bit more of an issue regardless of which setting I use for cutting. I've never changed the blade, and I found a lot of times that the Cricut blades that come from the factory don't seem to be the best, so I tend to actually change mine out, and I'll link the blades that I use down below for you because I like them a lot. But I'm going to go ahead and get this just weeded off. And like I said, we weeded out the heart, so you want to weed out any part that you want to be etched. So I want the outside of the heart to be etched, and I want you to be able to see through the paw prints. Now we're going to put this on to our cup, and I'm going to show you how we test to make sure our etching cream works. But you want to make sure that you clean your cup first. So I'm going to use some rubbing alcohol and a little paper towel, and I'm just going to get that all saturated with rubbing alcohol and rub the cup and clean it. I just clean the whole thing just in case I end up putting it on a different side. So you just kind of clean that all off, make sure it's good and clean, and then I let this dry for a few minutes to make sure that the alcohol is all dried so that we can put our stencil on. Now that our cup is dry, I'm going to use a larger squeegee, and that's what's going to hold my cup steady. Then I'm going to have my stencil here, my design, and I want to put this on to some transfer tape. I use a medium tack. This tape works really, really well. And I'm just going to kind of pull it out. And I forgot I had a chunk rolled on here already. It's fine. And I'm going to go ahead and put this down on to my transfer tape. This does not have to be perfect or pretty or anything. You just kind of got to get it on to the tape. And this is, again, a medium tack. This is my favorite transfer tape. I'm just going to cut this off. And I want to get a squeegee so that I can burnish from the back. So you want to burnish this from the back, meaning that you're going to take your squeegee and press down, and that allows your vinyl to hold to your transfer tape. Then we're going to remove the transfer tape from the vinyl like so. Super easy. Now I do recommend taking and trimming off any excess transfer tape. It's going to be a little easier to place this down onto your cup without it, and you can always save this for later use. Then I'm going to pull my cup in. And our image is a little bit big, but I'd rather it be a little big for this tutorial, and it'll be fine. So what I'm going to do is figure out where I want this to lay on my cup, get it as centered as I want it, whatever direction I want it, and lay it down. The next thing I'm going to do is come through with my fingers, and I like to use my fingers first, and I just sort of press this out, making sure that there's no wrinkles or anything like that up by our stencil. So I'm just pressing this down. Then what I want to do is come in with my squeegee, and I'm going to press this all down with my squeegee, making sure to kind of get anything around those edges. And I think that's probably good. So now what you want to do is take and remove your transfer tape from your vinyl. And I just do that by holding it down with my thumb and kind of pulling it back. And you can see I'm just pulling it at a super sharp angle away from the cup and the vinyl. Once this is off, what I want you to do is I want you to go around your design, and I want you to look and make sure there's no lifting along the edges of your design. All of your pieces are staying down. It's okay if we've got some like lifting down here. That's going to happen because the cup is curved. I'm not really worried about that, but I just want to make sure all around the design is good to go. Set that back down. Now we want to test to make sure this is going to etch. So what I'm going to do is I'm using Armor Etch etching cream. I'm going to open my jar, and I always keep the vinyl backing handy because you can set your jar on it, you can set your dirty brush on it, all the things. And I'm just going to take a little teeny dab of the etching cream, and I'm just gonna place it into my design. This way I'm not wasting any cream if for some reason it doesn't etch. Now you do wanna get kind of a like decent glob of it, like a thicker glob, which is fine. And we're gonna go ahead and let that sit. Now for this, I'm just gonna wipe that off with a paper towel once it's sat for about 5 to 10 minutes. The bottle, I wanna say, says like 3 to 5, but I find that that is just not quite enough. This says wait 1 to 3 minutes, and I've never had luck waiting that long. So I like to wait about 5 to 10, but you do what works best for you. I'm gonna go ahead and get all the like dried up stuff put back on that paper. We're gonna let that sit. We'll come back, wipe it off, and make sure it etched. And once we know that that etched for sure, we're gonna be able to etch the rest of it. It's been a couple minutes, so I'm just gonna use a paper towel to wipe this off. Normally I would rinse, but for now, because we're just trying a spot test, we're gonna do a paper towel. Now you can see, I don't know how, there we go. Look at that, this etches. So that's great. We can go ahead and put the rest of our etching cream onto our design now, and then we can clean it off when we're done. But this is a really easy process. I like to use a sponge brush, and again, we're gonna use that Armor Etch. Now I do recommend always closing it when you're not using it. You want to get a decent amount on your brush, and then I want you not to wipe, I want you not to swipe, I want you to kind of dab it on. And the key with this is a pretty heavy coating and to make sure that you've covered your entire design. So I want to make sure that I've got a pretty thick coat over the entire thing. Now keep in mind, you can take this Armor Etch cream and you can put it right back into the jar when we are done. So don't worry if you've got a ton of cream on here. The better coverage you have, the better your etch will come out. So I'm going to put this heavy coat on here, and you notice that I'm making sure that it's all staying on to the vinyl. If I get some over the edge, that's fine, but you don't want to get it anywhere that we don't want our stencil. So I'm just going to kind of move this around a little bit. And I have a pretty thick coat right here. So I'm just going to kind of spread this thick coat out. And I'm just going to kind of dab it everywhere to make sure that we've got everything well covered. Now, everyone sits there and says, well, leave it on for 20 minutes. You know, isn't that going to eat through the glass? No. There's only so far that this can eat through. One day I do want to try leaving Armor Etch on for like a couple days just to see what would happen. But honestly, I've left it on for hours and it's been fine. So I'm not concerned about it like ever eating through the glass. Glass doesn't always feel super thick, but it is a thick product. So now I'm going to take whatever's left on my sponge brush, and I'm going to put it right back into my jar. And then I'm going to set my sponge brush down over here, close my jar up, and we're going to let this sit for about 15 minutes. Then we will rinse all of the extra stuff off. We're going to go ahead and put the extra back in the jar, and then we'll rinse what's left off in the sink. So we're going to go ahead and let this sit, and we'll come right back. I forgot to scrape off my excess cream, but it's fine. So what I'm going to do here is rinse this off, and I just use like a lukewarm water. Make sure that you do wear gloves, especially when you're rinsing this off. I don't wear them when I put it on because I'm never touching it, but this, you really want to make sure that you're scrubbing this off. So definitely wear some gloves, and don't do this in like a fancy glass sink. Definitely don't recommend that. But all you do is you just rub it off, and I just kind of rub in a circular motion. It just helps break up all the etching cream and get it off really well. And like I said, I just use lukewarm water. You don't have to do anything too crazy with this. It's really very easy to do. And then you can peel off your stencil. Just make sure that none of it goes down the sink. It's not good for the environment. But what you want to do is just peel that off. Now once my etching cream's off, I can take my gloves off. So don't worry about that. Once that's ran down the sink, you don't have to worry about the etching cream anymore, like damaging your hands. It's fine. So I'm going to pick off all the pieces of our stencil. Now it's going to look like it's not etched while you're doing this because the water on it really kind of hides the etching. You can see it a little bit, but it's not like really like obvious. So don't panic if it doesn't look perfect right away. You're gonna have to wait till it dries, dry it yourself, and then you'll really see that image come out. Now, the best images to use for glass etching are ones that have a little bit of a bolder line. You're going to have to see that one a little bit better. Thin lines don't show quite as well. They will still work, but they're just not as bold. So I'm going to take this outside to show you what this looks like. Look at how good this came out. It's super even, really good. It looks so pretty. Now again, I use Armor Etch. That's my favorite etching cream. I've used a couple others and that one works the best for me, but feel free to try others and see if you like one better than the one I like. I'll link everything that we're using down below, including the cups. That way you make sure you don't get the borosilicate glass. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments down below. I'm always happy to answer those for you. Be sure you're subscribed here. That way you don't miss out on any of the fun DIY content we have coming. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and as always, happy crafting.